Hello, podcast listeners. You are now listening to the Coffee, Health, and Science podcast. I'm your host, Jordan River, and I want to thank you for tuning in today. Before we get started, please share the Coffee, Health, and Science podcast with a friend, with a peer, with a colleague. I sure do appreciate when you guys help spread the show. So, we are back from Colombia. The Purity Coffee team and the Coffee, Health, and Science podcast team took a little trip to Colombia, and we had so much fun visiting the farms and drinking all sorts of wonderful coffee. So I'm going to release a couple of episodes documenting that little trip, and by the end of this week, we'll be back to our regular scheduled programming with Dr. Sanjeev Chopra coming back on, more Dr. Coffee, and everything. But today, you can look forward to the first installment of the Colombia trip recap. So let me set the stage for you for this episode. The first day that we spent in Bogota, the capital of Colombia, we were spending time with the great Elaina. Thank you so much, Elaina, from Ally Coffee. She took us to a little coffee shop called Tourist Coffee, where we had some specialty coffees. It was incredible, and that's where we recorded this conversation. So first, you're going to hear Elaina discuss the different coffees she's producing and the regions they come from and how the coffee industry is reshaping those regions for the better. And then she serves up some incredible specialty coffee, and you're going to hear me, and you'll also hear Ildi Revi. That's right. Frequent guest of the show, the lovely Ildi Revi, is in this episode. We're together in the Colombian coffee shop, and I wanted to make sure to record this while we were down there so you guys listening could kind of feel like you're there with us in the Colombian coffee shop. So without further ado, I hope you enjoy the first part of the Colombia trip recap. Thank you all for listening, and enjoy the show.
Los Guardianes, Simbólica, and then another one which is not present here is Ventarones. The Guardianes is the organic ones, because it's like about the guards, about the people who are keeping the nature, who are keeping everything in balance, you know. And this animal, the jaguar, is like from the local culture, from the local history here, that is about like being a guard for all the nature, like a lion maybe, and internationally known. Here they don't have lions, they don't have the jaguar, and it's like more powerful, faster. And so the Ventarones is the super high altitude coffees. Ventarones means the winds, where the wind blows, something like that. And we work in Ventarones, we do Tierra Adentro, our community that we work with, that we started working with for Ally in Cauca, and we do Aponte as well.
Aponte is there.
Aponte is in Ventarones, yeah. Although Aponte is also in Guardians sometimes, but it's...
Tell a little bit about Aponte, what they do.
Yeah, so it's like a community with the different tribes inside of it. There are different like indigenous tribes that came from along the way from like Santander, and they were going down through all the Colombian coast. And Aponte was previously known, and still there are some places left that are known for, how you call it, poppy, like poppy cultivars. So they mitigated, like they moved from planting poppy to doing coffee. And yeah, so it's like a community of more than 300 producers within the community, women and like men, and the Aponte had a falla geológica, how you call it, the earth separation there.
Earthquake.
It was an earthquake, but it wasn't actually, like earthquake.
Created a gorge, a canyon?
Yeah, a canyon, like a gorge. So many houses were destroyed, and people are still recovering from that. So coffee is basically their entire the product or the industry that can help them keep up and like rebuild the houses
and they're transformed from poppy farmers into
coffee. Yeah, to coffee.
A better way of life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
How does the coffee differ?
There was a lot of like violence in that area, and actually the coffee makes them. Not only just producing the better product that is legal and is very, consumed around the world, but it also helps them to to investigate and like produce different varieties and like being involved in the entire processing, because it's much more
Dynamic and
it's
safe.
much more dynamic, safe, and like more. It involves more attention from picking to like from cultivation to processing.
Yeah, sure. That makes sense. How does the coffee differ because of the high altitude, the taste, the plant, how it's grown?
Well, it's not only about the altitude, it's also about the latitude. People are saying that the latitude matters a lot, but altitude basically it makes the cherry ripening slower, and the sugar development is the volume of sugar gets like bigger. So the coffee eventually tastes different. It's more acidic. It has more mucilage on the inside of on the outside of the bean, inside of the cherry. So yeah, it has some things to do. Also, the soil is different, right? And the amount of the latitude. Why latitude matters is because the amount of light hours is longer. So I think that's why. Yeah. And in Ecuador, for example, they have the same thing. They grow coffee even at 1,200 meters above the sea level, but the coffee tastes like as if it's growing. It's grown on the 2,000 meters above the sea level. So latitude is actually also makes sense.
That's interesting. And the soil matters because it's mountainous. Is it like volcanic ash soil?
Exactly.
And they say that's very, very good. Where I come from, people talk about how good it is down in South America.
Yeah,
That's the real deal?
Yeah, I even heard that. I read that somewhere in Italy, where the Etna volcano is, they have like an island like full of just like black soil, volcanic soil, and they recently planted the wine, and it was like spectacular. The wine tastes super different. It's very mineralic, like minerals, a lot of minerals. So I think that soil, altitude, latitude, and the way they produce in Aponte specifically, because they're also organic. First of all, because of their nature, because they're the tribe, the indigenous tribe, they do not apply any fertilizers because it's like it does not exist for them. And then secondly, it's expensive for them to get the fertilizers. And their production is actually, it's not that big, but there are lots of people and families that are planting it. So it grew outside of the community of Aponte to Tablón del Gómez, which is like the county and the main city. And so we've been working with them for about like 3 years, I think. This is the 4th year.
That's awesome. And what is that blend called again?
So this one for tourists is called, this edition is called Los Ventarrones, which is like the high altitude coffees.
Yeah. And we have one more here.
And then the Simbolica is the edition devoted to basically to the investigation of the producers and farmers with fermentation. This is like a crazy edition, which is where we have, for example, one of our producers from Huila, who is working on different fermentations, different processing methods, different drying approaches, and also the varietals. So he has Pacamaras, he has Purple Catura, which is like his own invention of the Purple Catura because of the color of the leaves.
Wow.
They're purple, they're like copper leaves. And this one that we have and the one you're going to taste is the one that I was telling you about, the producer from Caldas. He uses the sterilization method first before the fermentation. So he sterilizes and like takes away all the microorganisms that are present in the coffee, and then he applies the one and the only he wants to work on the fermentation, like lactobacillus, for example, in this case. So we're gonna taste this coffee. It's a Tabi variety. With it's aged with fermented with the dehydrated mandarin skin.
Oh, wow.
And it's aged in the barrels. It's crazy. This is the famous. This is like very popular edition for coffee for Emirates and the countries that are not allowed to, like consume alcohol. So the taste of that mimics the taste of alcohol, but it's just for them to taste how the barrel coffee tastes and like. Yeah, so this edition is mainly about that, about the discoveries in coffee and evolution. That nowadays is like a lot of discussion about that.
That's incredible.
Who roasts your coffee?
Me, I do.
Where? At the lab?
No.
Oh, okay. Oh, just the smell of it.
Well, we'll do it together.
Okay.
Cheers.
Our resident coffee expert, Ildi Revi, trying the tourist coffee here in the Colombian coffee shop.
So, Elaina, which one did you brew for us?
I think this is mandarina, but I think the one for you was going to be Francisco's coffee.
Oh, yeah. Well, this one definitely has that cherry, but also,
Cherry, mandarin,
it does have mandarin, but it manifests as a stone fruit, almost like a berry. Oh, you totally get the mandarin in the flavor.
And it's great that it's complex because the idea is not to get just the mandarin flavor, because the idea is to have this.
It's very syrupy. The body is silky and syrupy. It's a really silky coffee, don't you think, Patrick?
I've never tasted anything quite like it. It's incredible.
It just
There's
flows.
so many flavors.
It coats the tongue in just like a sheet of beautiful silk.
Well said.
Mm.
Oh my gosh. Now, how many coffees hit this here, back here, this flavor, wherever that is? Like,
Towards the back of the jaw.
It's a strong acidity, but really balanced. That's the thing, is the body holds it up, and then there's just enough caramelization in that it just fills the space of the acidity to make it syrupy. It's beautiful.
So he takes away all the microorganisms or bacteria that are present on the coffee cherry to make sure that he has the entire fermentation under control. So he adds like lactobacillus, and he has the dehydrated mandarin from the local supplier, which has to be with like a perfect condition. These peculiarities I don't know, but he's like, I have to find like the best mandarin.
Wow.
And like, yeah. So,
It really comes through. I mean, the mandarin is really, really present.
yeah, and so he does natural and also washed. This one is washed mandarin, and it's fermented for 36 hours with the dehydrated mandarin, and then it's rested after it's dried over like 25 days on the drying beds. He rests the coffee, the green dried beans, in the barrels, in the rum barrels.
Mandarin peel float out? How do they separate that from the finished coffee?
Yeah, they use the saranda, like the sieve.
Oh, yeah.
After
With the
that,
holes in it.
sifter, yeah.
So the mandarin peel is large and it doesn't
Yeah.
fall through the sieves.
Yeah, so and then he separates that and puts it in the, dries it and then rests for like a month in the barrels. The recent ones are from the Colombian, local Colombian rum de Caldas, which is like the most famous one. They use the El Roble, which is the oak, right?
And it's from rum? You said rum barrels.
Rum barrels.
How long does he leave it in the rum barrels?
1 month.
Oh, even the smell is different.
Yep.
Wow. Wait, the coffee is different as well.
Oh, the coffee's different.
Yeah, the coffee is Silvania. It's from La Primavera, the farm that Purity buys coffee
Very
from.
different. A lot of acetic acid in this one. More like a balsamic.
And anyways, you're gonna feel the. Why we brew mandarin on that one? Because we get more silky body, but we have.
And there is more astringency in this one. But it's nice. It's a pleasant.
Tastes completely different.
Yeah.
It tastes wildly different.
A coffee
It's like
tasting
it's not even
baby.
the same beverage. That's incredible. It's there's so many different notes.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah.
That's gonna taste that one. They're gonna prepare in.
So they're gonna do the same Sylvania
Silvania in this one.
in that, so you can taste the difference between.
So can I go back there?
Yeah, sure. Normis.
Coffee is such a complex food product. From the time It's grown through the time it's picked. There's so many naturally occurring chemical compounds, and they transform. And adding the heat of roasting transforms a whole bunch of chemicals. We've talked about that on your podcast.
That's right.
But then the heat and the water
Affects it as
a
well.
whole other thing.
Yeah.
So